Everybody, welcome to Fight Talk Podcast. Today, I will be interviewing John Scully, the Iceman. Today's Fight Talk Podcast is brought to you by Montauk Iced Tea. Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. You ready to start?
Yeah, for sure.
How did you get into boxing? What was your origin story?
Uh, well, basically, I came up as a kid in a really good time because Muhammad Ali was, the Thriller in Manila was going on and all those kind of fights. And so I remember that and seeing it in the newspaper. And then on the weekend television, I don't know if you know this, it's crazy, but back in the day, back in those days, every Saturday and Sunday, every weekend on network TV, free TV, NBC, ABC, CBS, they showed fights every weekend, like big fights: Hagler, Hearns, Leonard, Duran, Larry Holmes. I remember one of the first fights I ever watched, 78. It was Sugar Ray Leonard and Andy Price on CBS, free TV. You didn't have to pay. You didn't have to go to an app. You didn't have to do any of that. Also, the Rocky movie came out when I was 9 years old. So, and then it came out again. The next one came out, I was like 11 or 12. So I was big into the boxing. It was everywhere back then. And I used to, I started my own boxing league in my town, and my town is Windsor. So I used to we had a championship. We called it WBC, the Windsor Boxing Council, and I would box with kids. And I remember my first fight, 1980, May of 1980. I fought Tony Vieira in the basement of somebody's house, and I had Tony up against the washing machine, and he was trapped, and I won. I stopped Tony Vieira in the first round, and after that, it just escalated. And my father, eventually, when I was 14, he brought me to a gym, and I've been there ever since.
What sports did you do before boxing?
I was when I was about from the time I was about 5 until 14 or 15, I was a big baseball player. I loved baseball. I used to play baseball in the wintertime. I used to play baseball in the snow. I would play by myself. I would hit the ball in the snow. I would run down and get it. I would hit it back. I would hit it back. I'd do that for 2 hours in the snow. Then I was big into football. I played on a midget football team, but the most football I played was in the park by my house. There was Back in those days, if you wanted to find any kid in my neighborhood, you went to the park. We were playing football. It didn't matter if it was a blizzard, if it was a rainstorm, if it was 110 degrees. We were playing football in the park. So football and baseball were my two sports, and then boxing.
And tell me about your relationship with Johnny Dukes.
Johnny Duke, wow. Johnny Duke is a guy from Hartford. His real name was Giulio Gallucci. He fought as a pro. He trained with Sugar Ray Robinson in Harlem. They had the same manager, George Gainsford. And Duke, Duke was like a club fighter. I think he probably had a losing record as a pro. But back then, they didn't build you up. You just fought everybody. Everybody just fought. So, but he started a gym in Bellevue Square in the projects in Hartford in the 1950s, and he was there until 1997. And he was an amazing guy. He was a trainer. He had Back in the 1950s. He trained a national champion by the name of Jimmy Blythe, and then in 1974 he trained Marlon Starling when Marlon Starling won the National Junior Olympics as a 15-year-old. His gym produced. I mean, Lawrence Claybay trained out of there. Mike Oliver trained out of there. Just tons of guys. But the thing about Johnny Duke, the thing that influenced me the most about Johnny Duke was he was just a different kind of guy. I can't even tell you all the stories about this guy, but he was a white guy in the projects back during the race riots in the 1960s. And they like to say Johnny Duke was the only white person. Even police couldn't go there. Like, Johnny Duke was the only white guy allowed there. And he just was a part of that community. And he had, like I say, he had a great gym, but he had a thing he would do where he would buy eggs at a discount price, and he would put them in the back of his truck, and he would drive around the projects, and he would sell the eggs to the people who lived there at a discount, you know. And so they used to call him the Egg Man. So they knew when his truck was coming that you could get eggs for a good price, because he knew dozen eggs could feed a family. He also had a, for lack of a better term, I guess you could say it was a loan sharking industry. He would let people borrow money, and he would let me borrow money. Even when I first turned pro, I needed like $100. Yeah, all right, here's $100, but you got to pay me back by next Saturday. You got to pay me back 110. And so you'd have to pay interest. And he had a bullhorn, and he would have the bullhorn in his truck. And if you owed him money, he would drive around looking for you. And if he saw you like across the street, he'd yell at the through the bullhorn so everybody could hear, and he'd be like, "Tony, you mother effer, you owe me $12." And they go, "Oh, dude, come on, dude, stop that." So he was when he died I mean 2006, I believe it was. He died, and I raised money to get a plaque for him. And this will tell you how strong his ties were in the project. He had I bought the plaque. I raised the money. I bought the plaque. The plaque cost like $2,500. It was expensive, and it was made out of, I don't know if it was brass or copper or whatever it was. It was something expensive, right? So I bring it. Then we're gonna unveil it on, say, Monday morning. So I bring it Sunday night because it's so heavy and I just want it there. So I lean it up in the projects. I lean it up against a brick wall where it's gonna go. And there was a few guys standing there, and as I'm getting ready to leave, I'm thinking like, man, I'm gonna leave this. It's almost like more than $2,500 brand new. I'm just leaving this in the middle of the project. Like, what am I doing? And I asked one of the guys. I said, "What do you think, man? What do you think I should leave this? What should I do?" He's like, "Listen, that's Johnny Duke. Nobody's gonna touch it." He said, "And if anybody does, somebody's gonna see him, and they're gonna come out and give them a beating." He said, "Nobody's gonna touch it. It'll be here tomorrow." And we came back the next morning, and it hadn't been moved, hadn't been touched.
And tell me about the 1988 Olympic trials.
Wow. The Olympic trials, I like to say, if you ask me what's the happiest moment of my life, like a 1 10-second span, what was the happiest moment? Now, most people would say when your child is born, or you get married, or something like that. But the thing about that, and it's funny, they have an issue with my mentality. But I tell these people in my life, I say, look, I was way happier when I beat Darren Allen to win the Eastern Olympic trials, to make the Olympic trials. The reason being, I knew I was going to get married. I knew the child was going to be born. It was not a shock. It was
You were
not a surprise.
prepared.
Yeah, I was prepared. I knew it was coming. But when I beat Darren Allen, I didn't know till they said it. So that rush of adrenaline that went through me, but you got to understand, Darren Allen was a world amateur champion at the time, and he had been the national champion. He was on the Pan American Games team. He had beaten 3 Olympic gold medalists previously. He was a guy I used to watch on TV, so I was really, really, focused on him in particular. So, and I remember years later, just like 4 years ago, he wrote on Facebook. He talked about our fight, and he said, when I fought John Scully, he fought me like he would rather die than lose. And I started laughing, and I sent him a message. I said, listen, I said, I don't want to die. I didn't really want to die, but you were so accurate. I said, that's how I fought. Like, in my mind, I would rather die than lose to this guy. And that's why I won. I won the Eastern Olympic trials. Then I went, so you have to qualify for the Olympic trials by winning either the national championships, the Golden Gloves, the Eastern trials, the Western trials. So I won the Eastern trials. Honestly, it's a weird thing to say, and I never realized this till the last couple of years. My goal was to make it to the Olympic trials. My goal really wasn't the Olympics so much. It's weird. The way I was thinking, the Olympics was so big, and I didn't know those guys, all the guys from Germany and Bulgaria. I didn't know those guys. I was more concerned with being one of the best of my country, the guys I knew that were famous to me. So when I went to the Olympic trials, I wanted to win, of course. I trained hard and all that, but the mental edge, it wasn't quite the same. And I made it to the semifinals. I beat the number 3 guy in the country on the way, Joe Hill from Nebraska, and I ended up fighting Darren in a rematch, and he beat me on a decision. I honestly I thought I won the fight, and we actually had they wrote about it in the newspaper. We had a huge argument in the hallway outside the dressing rooms after the fight. And it was a big deal. But looking back, it was fair. I have no complaints. He was a great fighter. But being one of the best in the country with, we're talking. I'm in the dressing room and there's Roy Jones is there, Kennedy McKinney's there, Michael Carbajal is there, Michael Bent is there, Riddick Bowe is there. So to be among that crowd and be one of those guys, it's a big thing for me.
Um, would you say fighters were mentally stronger back then when you fought than they are now?
Yeah, 100%.
And
100%.
would you say they're physically stronger back then than they are now? Like, are they
I
physically
mean,
strong?
well, here's the thing. I give an example. Some people say, you know, fighters today, they're bigger, they're stronger. Listen, a middleweight's a middleweight. He's 5'10", 160 pounds. Sugar Ray Robinson was 5'10", 160. Sugar Ray Leonard was 5'10", 160. They're not bigger. You know what I mean? I just think it's a weird thing. People say today in 2025 the training is better. I'm like, how is it better? How? Give me one example. How is it better? You have supplements, you have all these things. Well, I got news for you. The world record for punches thrown in a fight happened 20 years ago. Ray Oliveira and Vince Phillips, and then Ray Oliveira and Zach Padilla, Ray Oliveira and somebody else. Ray Oliveira had 3 fights. He fought in one fight. I believe he threw over 1,500 punches. Like if you fight a 12-round fight, you're hoping for 700, 750. If you throw 800, that's a lot of punches, right?
Yeah.
Ray was throwing 1,500. You're telling me somebody today is doing that? Nobody. They got all the supplements, they got the vitamins, they got the videos, they got the Tybo, they got all the stuff, and they still can't do it. So people can't tell me they're better today. They're tougher
Yeah.
today. I mean, look at Mickey, look at Mickey Ward and Arturo Gatti. You show me one guy on the planet Earth today that's going to go through the 9th round with another guy and stand up to that. Who's going to do that? You don't see that. And if you do, here's the thing: the fight the other night, Garcia, right? Rolly and Garcia. Look, they're good fighters, all they're champions, but it wasn't a good fight, right?
Not at all.
And they were not willing to engage. We're living in an era where everybody wants to be Floyd. They want to be undefeated. They want to, he got through the fight without taking any damage. Man, that's not what fighting is. I love defense just like anybody, but sometimes to win, you have to take damage. And if you're not willing to
Yeah.
take damage, then you can't win, period. And, Mickey and Arturo are the perfect example, but there's nobody today. These guys, these two are two of the so-called best in the world. They are the top. Everybody sees them on the street. They want their autograph. They want their picture. They were not willing to do what Mickey and Arturo did. Hagler and Hearns. Look at Hagler came out against Tommy Hearns because it was a big fight, a big grudge match, and all that type of stuff. And Marvin, watch the fight. The fight started 3 seconds, 2 seconds after the bell. Marvin came out and threw a huge right hand trying to get the fight started. He didn't wait. He didn't feel anything out. We don't have that today. And all these guys are supposedly in better shape, but they obviously don't fight like it. They don't fight like they're confident in
Yeah.
it. So would you rather be the guy 20 years ago throwing 2,000 punches in a fight and, taking the risk? Or do you want to be full of vitamins today and you're throwing 400 punches? I think the other night, I don't know if they were joking. I saw a meme. I don't trust memes. They said the Devin Haney fight was the lowest amount of punches ever thrown in a pay-per-view fight or a championship fight. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's
I
true or
saw
not.
that.
I saw it and I'm like, well, there you go. Like, what's the point of having an Uzi if you can't fire it. The guy with the 38 caliber is going to kill you. You have an Uzi and he's got a 38 caliber, but he's going to kill you because you're not willing to fire your guns.
Yeah.
It makes no sense to be in great shape and not use it. So I if I had to have a fighter, I said, okay, we're going to fight for the all-time championship, and you can have a guy from 1980 or 2025, and we're going to fight 15 rounds to the death practically. I'm taking 1980 all day, every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are you going to Mickey Ward's first annual 5K run?
Yeah, I'm playing. I saw that a couple weeks ago. Yeah, I should be there. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I'm
gonna be
gonna
good.
run it.
Oh, you are? Oh, good,
Yeah.
good, good. Yeah, I was telling, matter of fact, I was just telling the guy at my gym the other day that we need to get a team, get our team up there because we have a van. Get everybody up there and meet Mickey and there'll be other fighters from the area up there. I'll try and get Ray Oliveira and those guys to go. And yeah, it's gonna be real cool. Yeah, I'll see you up there for sure.
And tell me about when you fought Henry Mastic for the IBF Light Heavyweight World Championship.
You know, it's funny. Like when I watched fights as a kid, like I was telling you, every weekend you could watch fights. Every Arguello and Pryor. I mean, all these guys are on TV. So when I saw, championship fights or any fights on TV, I'm thinking to myself, these guys are at their best, and whoever wins is going to be the best. They're ready, they're focused, everything. And I remember a guy. Matter of fact, it was Mark Breland. I remember Mark Breland saying, I can't believe how many fights I went into when I wasn't really ready. Like there was something wrong. I had a sore hand, a sore foot. I had a cut that I was hiding from somebody. Uh, when I went to fight Maskey, obviously you want to win. It's the world championship, and I'm picturing everything's going to be great. It's going to be my best against his best. And, but unfortunately, I mean, at the time, my mother was dying of cancer and she was she was at home. She was in the bed in the living room at home. She actually passed away 4 months later. So I'm not using that excuse. I'm just saying, it's that was going on, and making the weight was difficult. And and the biggest factor was Henry was a great fighter. Like Henry should absolutely be in the Hall of Fame. He was a world amateur champion. He was in the Olympics. He won the Olympic gold medal. He was undefeated. He ended up having 10 title defenses. I was his 10th. And, but he had the problem with him for me. He was so tall. He was 6'4". He was 6'4". He was southpaw, but also, and this maybe didn't play a factor, but he was in his country. He was like they described him as like the Michael Jordan of Germany. Like he was such a huge superstar. But for me, the biggest problem was his mentality, the way he fought. It's like if you fight a guy, most people in the world, especially Americans, Puerto Ricans, North Americans, if you start talking a little trash, or you get a little rough, they're gonna respond, right? That's just the way we are. But Henry was the type of guy. He wasn't concerned with that. He was concerned with winning. Like to him, it would be like I was trying to get him to fight more on the inside, and I was, being a little rough, and I stepped on his foot one time real hard, and and he didn't care. Like he didn't care. He kept boxing, and he stayed behind a really long jab, and he kept his distance, and so he fought a really good fight, and it was hard. With him being southpaw, it was really hard to reach him, and he won. He ended up winning the decision over me.
And how did it feel getting to spar Roy Jones Jr., Vinny Paz, James Toney, all these
Yeah.
legends and great fighters?
Right. I loved it. That was it was so it was big for me, to box with these guys because I felt like it made me better. And like Vinny in particular, I tell you, Vinny was he wasn't a hard puncher to the head. He wasn't a puncher. You wouldn't say, oh, Vinny's a puncher. Your brother Joe's a puncher. Vinny wasn't a puncher, but his left hook to the body was really hard. Like he had a really good left hook to the body. He would dig it in there. And the thing I liked about Vinny, every sparring he sparred like it was a real fight. Like you knew when you go spar Vinny Pazienza, you're not sparring today. You're having a fight. Like you're gonna and if he can knock you out, you're going out. Like he's gonna kill you. And so we would really go at it. And I remember I didn't know Vinny at all. I had, even though we're both from New England, this was in 1991. I had never actually met him till we sparred. And I went up, and I only went to spar. It's funny how you judge people. I had seen him on TV, and he's real cocky, and he's wearing the crazy outfits, and I wasn't that interested, like, in meeting him. I just wanted to spar with him. But we get up there, and I remember I did 6 rounds. It was August of 1991, and I did the 6 rounds, and it was so intense, and we're going at it, and the harder he went, the harder I went, and the harder I went, the harder he went. And at the end of the 6th round, when the bell rang, and we both stopped. We were in the middle of an exchange, and the bell rang, and we stopped, and we looked at each other really hard. It seemed like a minute, but it was probably 2 seconds. We looked at each other, and then we both slammed gloves really hard, right? And he goes, man, can you come back Thursday? Can you come back Thursday? Can we do it again? Let's do it again. I said, yeah, I'll be back. And I ended up sparring with him for like 7 years after that. And it was good. I always knew if I could spar Vinny 8 or 10 rounds, like a fight, and come through it and feel good, then I'd be ready for my own fight.
And hey, Mike Sereni, hit the request to join. I'm gonna let you on and ask a few questions, but for now, who was your toughest opponent?
Um, it's a weird thing to say, right? For me, the people I fought didn't they was tough. Like Tim Littles was very tough. He was young. He was very fast. He threw combinations. He had a lot of adrenaline. Drake Dazzy was really strong, and then there was good fighters. But I always felt like, me personally, I always, and I guess maybe I did it to myself, but making weight and going through what I had to do to make weight, I was more concerned with making weight and trying to feel good than I was about anybody I fought. Like, I wasn't as concerned about them, and so I always had it in my mind. I gotta be careful. I gotta in a particular fight. But as far as in reality, I mean, like I say, Tim Littles was the #1 contender when we fought. We fought the semifinal to Riddick Bowe and Evander Holyfield, the first fight in Las Vegas, and I actually had cuts under here and over here because I was really super, super, super dehydrated, and I didn't know until after the fight that when you go to Las Vegas, the desert air, it dehydrates you even more. I didn't know that, and so I went there, and I was losing all this weight, and I was happy. I was like, oh, this is great, man. I'm losing all this weight. I'm going to make weight. I didn't realize it was because I was, being dehydrated. So when I had really no fluid in my eyes, in my face, I cut very easily. So I had 3 cuts in the fight, and but I actually waited because it was such a big fight. Holyfield and Bowe fought right after me, so I didn't even go to the hospital. I stayed to watch the fight, and I stayed, and we did. It's crazy how they did it. I don't know if they still do it like this, but in Las Vegas for the big fights, they don't give you a ticket to the fight. Like, when you fight, you're supposed to leave after, but I wasn't leaving. So during the Holyfield Bowe fight, I walked around the arena just because I didn't have a seat. So I just kept walking and walking and walking. And the ninth, it was either the ninth or 10th round, whatever round, you could look it up. Whatever round of Holyfield and Bowe won was a great, all-time great round. I was walking around the perimeter, and it was like being in the Roman days, the Colosseum, and they're cheering on the lion, right? They want the lion to kill the guy. That's what it was like waves of people. On this half, Holyfield's fans, and over there was a bunch of Riddick fans. And anytime Bowe would come back, they'd go crazy. And then Holyfield would come back, and they'd go crazy. And it was really something to see, and being there in person.
In your opinion, who is the greatest fighter to ever live?
Well, I was just talking to, if you know Eric Kelly, I was talking to Eric Kelly about this Saturday night, and he was saying, is Roberto Duran in your top 10? I said, listen, the top 10 is not big enough for the top 10. There's 40 guys in history who could be in the top 10. So if you put one in there and you take another out, it's okay. Like if you have Durant in your top 10, that makes sense. If you don't, I say, well, yeah, I guess there's 10 other guys that could go before him. But I think at his best, like when you take each fighter at his best, Sugar Ray Leonard at his best, I would say the most unbeatable, the most dynamic, the guy. I think Roy Jones at his best day, I think he was the best from what I see. Now, people say Ray Robinson, and I have no problem. Obviously, great boxing minds say Ray Robinson, which is fine. But there's a couple things that I say about Ray Robinson, and I'm not against him at all. I know he was great. But one thing I remember is that I saw a list of his record one time. I was in a gym in Reno, Nevada, and they had his record on the wall. But they didn't just have his record, they had notes on every single fight. And I was amazed how many times he'd been dropped in his career. He had been dropped quite a few times. So that tells me maybe he doesn't have the greatest chin, but it tells me maybe his defense wasn't so great because he was getting hit hard enough to get dropped. I think he was obviously great, and he won so many fights in a row and only lost one out of like 130 or whatever it was. But Roy Jones at his best, Roberto Duran the night he fought Sugar Ray Leonard. Even I'll take it this way: Buster Douglas is not one of the top 10 greatest heavyweights in history, right? His victory over Tyson was, but he was not. But that night, he was as great as anybody. He was as great as any Muhammad Ali. Like that night, he fought so perfectly and with such skill and precision and technique and poise, and he showed toughness, he showed heart, he showed everything. He checked every box. So maybe Buster Douglas wasn't an all-time great, but on that night he was just as good as any heavyweight who ever lived. So it's a tough thing. If you put certain guys in the top 10, I could see it. If there's no room for them, I could see that as well.
And who's your favorite fighter?
For me, it was Muhammad Ali. I think Muhammad Ali and Roy Jones, Sugar Ray Leonard. But Muhammad Ali, not just when I was a kid, I watched him and I knew all about him. But it wasn't just the boxing, the fighting. It was him as a man. And I said, man, like this guy, you see so many famous guys, right? And they're concerned with their clothes and letting you know how great their clothing line is, and how big their house is and how many rooms they have, but you never saw Muhammad Ali in that light. He was always about you know making people better and doing the right things, and he was an incredible guy, and at his best as a heavyweight, and I would say his best would be 1966 and 1967. I wouldn't put anybody above him as a heavyweight of all time. I would say him, just like I say, over his entire career, there's people who had more wins. They did more things. They didn't win 3 legitimate titles like he did. But in terms of the overall package, I think Muhammad Ali was my guy, 100%.
I'm gonna let Mike Sereni join and ask a few questions now.
Okay.
Hey Mike, how you doing?
I don't see him yet. I see it's blurry.
Yeah, I don't see him either. I don't know. Maybe bad connection. I'll just ask you a question in the meantime.
Hello?
Oh, he's trying to talk. Yeah, hey Mike.
You can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now
Yes,
a
sir.
little bit.
Oh, there we go. How are we doing, guys?
There he goes.
And we're back. Whoop. How are we doing, gentlemen?
All right,
Good,
that's
good.
a little better.
Better now?
Yeah, that's better.
All right, awesome. So, how are we doing? John,
Everything's
nice to see
good.
you. I'm Mike.
How you doing?
I just turned pro last year.
Oh,
34 years old. I turned pro kind of late. Actually, I'm 35 now. Wow. um, so yeah, I got like a few questions. Like, I understand you worked with legendary fighters, Chad Dawson, Arthur Beterbiev. When you take on a new fighter, what's the first thing that you try to be aware of? Like, what's the first thing that you're looking to fix? Not necessarily looking to change, but looking to notice.
Well, there's two things with any fighter, whether it be a guy the first day in the gym or Arthur or Chad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Physically, I'm looking, to develop their jab first and
Okay.
foremost. Like that's the first thing we work on, the jab. I want you to have a good jab. If you have nothing else and you work with me, you're going to have a good jab, right?
Okay.
But the most important thing, and this is with little kids or pro champions, and I've actually declined certain people or shied away from even training them seriously because of this. If you don't have the mentality,
Mm-hmm.
then you're wasting your time. Like you have to have the mentality, and I don't. You don't have to be. You don't have to have every fight as a war, right? I'm not saying that, but when this is my stock line, when the 9th round of Gaddy and Ward comes for you, if you're not ready to do what they did, this may not be for you, right? Because
Yeah,
you can go through
100%.
your whole career and never have to deal with that. Like I've never been in a round. I've been in some tough rounds. I've never been in Gaddy and Ward 9th round. Like I've never
Yeah.
had to do that. But I like to think I'd suck it up, right? That's my
Yeah, of course.
mentality. I've had guys tell me they wouldn't do that. They pro
Yeah.
fighters have told me I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do what they did. And I said, well, man, then it may never affect you, and you may be a champion, you may be a world champion, but sooner or later it's going to come for you, and you got to be able to deal with it. But for me, the first day in the gym with anybody, I'm looking to see how they respond to fatigue, and that's a telltale sign,
Very
right?
important.
And
Yes.
and I have a thing, and I have a drill I do. And Travis, I think did I do the bag jump with you? Did I have you jump over a
Yeah, you
bag?
did that. In 2021, I went
Right.
up
Okay.
there to spar, and yeah, we did that.
Okay. So you could tell a lot. They say like there's an old saying. The President Roosevelt, I think he said it. Something about you know, the fear, like a coward. Fatigue makes cowards of us
Cowards
all.
of men.
Okay.
Yes.
And believe me when I tell you, that's more true than people realize. I've sparred and fought guys who were King Kong. They were King
Mm-hmm.
Kong, and they were going to kill me, and they were going to. And I tell them, I said, don't worry. I said, let's wait a little while. Let's see how you feel in about 5-10 minutes from now, right? See
Yeah.
what your mentality is at that moment. And they're not the same people. They're not the same people. And so I do this drill on the heavy bag. It's a heavy bag we lay it on the ground, right? You lay
Mm-hmm.
the heavy bag on the ground. You have a timer. You jump side to side over. You got to jump both feet. You jump over for a minute. You're trying to do 100 jumps in a minute, but ultimately you're
Okay.
trying not to stop. Now, most people can't do 100 jumps, right?
Yeah.
Most people can't do the minute. Believe it or not, it sounds easy, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at the mentality of the people as they see the fatigue setting in, as they, around 30 jumps in, they start to realize this is not nearly as easy as they thought it was going to be. I listen to what they say. I listen to the excuses they make. I look at their facial expression. And that pretty much will tell me everything. That 1 minute is going to tell me everything I need to know about them as a human being in that moment. Now, if they're a failure, maybe I can improve them, right?
Yeah.
But some you can't improve, and that thing is the telltale sign. You try and jump that bag for a minute, and how you respond to the fatigue, because I've seen guys literally stop after 32 seconds and walk away, and they say, "I'm too
Wow.
tired," and I go, "Guess what? It's not for sure. I'm not positive, but based on what you just did, you're not a fighter. You're not cut out
Yep.
for this game. You're not
I
cut out for
completely
this."
understand that.
You get it,
Yeah,
right?
I do
So
something very similar with burpees. I
yeah.
feel like you can't. You have to have your workout suck just a little bit. Like
Yes.
even if you have an easy day, like I feel like I don't accomplish something unless it sucks just a little bit.
Well,
So
look, I'll put it this way. I've gotten mad at fighters, good fighters, right? And I said, listen, man, you're not supposed to like people that say they love training aren't training hard enough.
I, I
Right?
100% agree.
You know, you
100%
know what I
agree.
mean? You're not doing it right. You know, and I tell the guy, I've told so many people, I said, look, if you hit the heavy bag for 3 rounds and you don't take a deep breath and you're fine, you're not in great shape. You're not doing it right. You're supposed to be tired. Do you think the best fighters in the world don't get tired? Of course they do. That's why they're the best fighters in the world, man. Like that's why they're not. You know, a lot of people, and it's kind of a crazy. And I'm very big on the mentality of human beings, and
Mhm.
in relation to boxing. If I go in the gym, I picture this scenario: a fighter brings his girlfriend to the gym. She's never been to a gym. He's trying to impress her, right? He's going to hit the heavy bag in front of her, or he's going to hit the mitts, or he's going to spar. He's going to pretend he's not tired, right?
Mhm.
Because he doesn't want her to think he sucks or he's soft, right? He'd be afraid to show his potential girlfriend that he's tired, right? That's not real, man.
Mhm.
If I'm in there, I'm hitting the bag and I'm going to get exhausted. And if she says, wow, you're tired, I'm going to go, listen, you try it. You hit the
Yep.
bag for a minute. Tell me you're not going to be tired.
Because I'm
I go,
pushing.
I'm good because I'm tired. That's why I'm good. Man, are you kidding
Yeah.
me? You show me somebody who hits the heavy bag for 6 rounds and isn't tired. I just showed you a guy who isn't doing it right, and he's trying to look good for his friends. He's not.
Yep.
He's not doing it for reality. Reality is fatigue, man. You got to get tired.
Do you
Yeah.
have any
100%.
regrets on your boxing career?
Yes, I didn't get tired enough in the gym. Yes, absolutely.
I actually,
Because I was
I
that
agree with
guy
that. I'm the
sometimes.
same way. I
I
feel
was
that.
that guy sometimes. Like I would, you know, you want to look good, right? You remember White Man Can't Jump, and he told Wesley Snipes. He said, "You'd rather look good and lose than look bad and win." I go, that's 10,000 boxers on the planet Earth right now. They'd rather look good
Yeah.
and lose. Yep.
Yeah,
I feel
my
like there was a point in my boxing where I was the same way. I wanted to be slick. I wanted to tap with the
Right.
jab and move.
Right.
But now I feel like my philosophy in boxing is a little bit different. Now I like taking people into deep waters and drowning them. If
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. You can win fights. You can beat every fight's different. You can beat certain people looking smooth and like here's the thing. A lot of people have seen me fight, and usually if I fought top guys, Michael Nunn, Tim Littles, Henry Mosky, I had to be aggressive. I had to put my hands up. I had to come in, right? When they see me box, they're like, "Man, I didn't know you could box." I said, "Man, that's you haven't seen certain fights, but I beat certain guys 10, shutouts, beat guys easy, boxing and moving and being slick. But
yeah,
a lot of the ones on TV, you're fighting a high level, you got to fight a different fight. And some people don't have that ability. They can only win one way.
one way.
You have to go out. And here's when I was talking about the sparring with Vinny Pazienza earlier, right? I'll expand on that. When you spar Vinny, it's like you're fighting Vinny. Like it's a real fight. You're sparring him, you're fighting him. Like he's trying to knock you out, you're trying to knock him out. That's it, right? Vinny, what I admired about him and why he is going into the Hall of Fame in June, because Vinny, generally speaking, didn't care how he looked. I mean, he looked good in a lot of fights, he did look good. But if he had to look bad in order to win, he was willing to do that. He was willing to get bloody. He was willing to get swelled up. He was willing to have people laugh. Like, oh, look at him. He's sorry. His defense is horrible. He was willing to go through that to win. And there was times I regret where I'm like, man, I should have pushed it more, but there was an edge, there was a line there. I didn't want to cross it sometimes, and where I'm getting hit and I'm getting plastered, and looking bad, because you can hear people in the audience, like
Yeah.
one of the worst things in my life was when you get hit with a shot and everybody goes, you hear 100 people behind you going, oh, and you're like, oh man, that must have looked really bad, and
Yep.
so, I on the one hand, I had a really strong mentality, and on the other hand, I had a weaker mentality.
Mhm.
It's weird. I wish I could have blended the two together for sure.
How did you
Yeah.
get your nickname, the Iceman? How did you get that name?
Believe it or not, it really had nothing to do with boxing. People was, oh, you're cool as ice. You're cool, right?
Mhm.
And kids ask me, why do they call you the Iceman? I say, it's because out of all the people you've ever met in your entire life, I'm the coolest one, right? But that's fine. When we were kids, and he just passed away this year, kid who lived up the street from me, Albert Graham. Rest in peace to Albert Graham. But when I was a kid, it was a big thing where you would make fun of each other. And I don't know what they call it where you live. We call it ranking. Like, oh, he ranked on me, man. He's ranking me. And we would call each other, you got a head like a apple or a rock head or, and making fun of each other. So they used to say that my head was square and like a blockhead. And so, and I actually have it on video, 1985 at the Gore Ballroom. And they were at my fight, and you can hear them and they were calling me blockhead, like a block of ice, and that transferred to eventually the Iceman. I'm the Iceman because I have a head like a block of ice, and it's square and not round or oval. So that's where it came from.
Nice, nice, interesting.
Mike, do you have anything you want to say to him?
Yeah, actually, I do. So, like I said in the beginning, I'm 35 years old, and I literally had my pro debut in August. So I know I'm coming in really late, but here's another part about that is I've been boxing for about, I'd say, 20 years on and off.
Yeah.
So I've fought in the amateur system. I have a couple fights under my belt, but I've basically been a blue collar worker that just has an obsession with boxing.
Right.
Um, so I've also been spoken to with other people about coaching and stuff like that. I really want to know, like, when did you decide that you were going to make the switch? Because I don't think I'm even close to stopping now. I want to have a fight probably within the next 6 months, just
Right.
because I recovered from my last fight. I had a hand injury,
Right.
but
Well,
now I'm back at 100%. So,
all right. Well, believe it or not, almost the entire time I was fighting as a pro, I was training amateurs. I had an amateur team. We were called we
okay.
had we were the 5-star bomb squad. It was me and the 4 kids,
Okay.
and we used to go to tournaments. So, and I always tell this story to give you an example. In December of '95, I was staying at Foxwoods in a beautiful room in a beautiful hotel with room service and getting ready to fight Michael Nunn. Right, got a beautiful room, nice bed, all that, beautiful view. And 3 weeks later, I was in a motel in Saratoga, New York, sleeping on the floor in a room at the Region One Silver Gloves, because I had my team and I had to sleep on the floor. And then one of the other coaches was on the other side of the room. It's like 2 in the morning, and I knew he was awake. His name was Brian, and it's like 2 in the morning, and I'm like, Brian, I say, what? I go, 3 weeks ago, I had a suite at Foxwoods, and now I'm sleeping on the floor with you guys. you know, but that's just how it is. And so I always knew I was going to be a trainer anyway. I knew that I was going to, I was a trainer already. And believe it or not, while I was still fighting, I was still an active fighter. I was training Elizabeth Mueller, who was world champion at lightweight in female boxing, and what eventually turned me, I turned by, I was kind of forced out. One was after my last fight. Usually guys go out with a loss. Their last fight is a bad day, right? My
Yeah.
last fight was one of the best fights of my career. I beat a good kid out of Detroit, and I was feeling great. And I remember being in the hallway outside the dressing room after the fight,
Mhm.
saying to myself, things are going to happen now. Now it's going to, now we're back on track. I'm back on track. So I'm going to be on TV again, and blah, 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 blah. Fast forward 9 fights over the next year and a half fell out on me. 9 in a row. And I mean, just guys got sick, the show got canceled, whatever happened. 9 fights in a row. Finally, I get a fight with Elvir Mariki. I don't know if you remember. Elvir's from New York. Kid Kosovo, they call him. He fought Antonio Tarver, a good fighter. So I get a fight with him. I think it was ESPN. So I'm like, oh, this is good. This is good. All right, this is great. In the meantime, I had started training Lawrence Claiborne, super heavyweight from the Olympics, and he's a good heavyweight contender. So I get a fight. Say they say it's June 1st. Me and Elvira June 1st. I said, oh, this is great. This is great. June 1st. All right. The next day, I get a call from Clay Bay's manager. He's fighting June 2nd. So in my mind, I'm going, all right, well, I'll just train. I'll train myself earlier, and then I'll train him later, and then I'll go to the fight. And I
Yeah.
said, I can't do that. I can't. He deserves my attention 100%. I can't be focused on my fight and neglect him. So
Yeah. So you had to make a
that was the
decision.
moment I decided that I got to transition over to full time trainer. So that was
Okay.
2003.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's insightful. And I've noticed that a lot of guys who go out on a loss. So that's
Yeah. Oh,
awesome.
it's so crazy. Like when I was a kid, the first book I ever studied in my life was the 1952 Ring Record book. My father had Ring Record book 1952, and I would look at all the records, and it was amazing. Willie Pep, Sugar Ray Robinson, Muhammad Ali, all went out with losses. And then I started looking. I go, man, everybody goes out with a loss. This is insane. And I always said, I'm not going out with a loss. I'm not doing that. But I went out with a beating a good fighter. It was good performance. I can't stress. It was like top three of my career. Like I felt like I was a young guy, and I didn't plan to go out. But
Yeah.
as luck would have it, it's funny you mentioned that. That's one of the things I always say. Well, I went out with a win. Most guys don't go out with a win.
That's kind of how I approached boxing later on after I had kids and everything, because my son wanted to compete in sports and he knew that I always wanted to turn pro. So I couldn't tell him, oh, I didn't turn pro just because it was really hard. So I just started training, and like one thing led to another. And I was asked multiple times, like, is this just to like get your debut and like be done with it, or like do you want to continue? And I'm like, if it was my choice, I would fight forever. So now I gotta argue with my wife about, are we gonna fight till we lose, or are we just gonna keep fighting? And like I said, I'll probably fight until I'm dead. So
I got you.
um, that's
I
that's where I'm at
understand
with that.
that.
I
I
get that.
understand that.
What is
Yeah.
the greatest boxing match ever, in your opinion?
Man, um, that's a tough one. I think off the top of my head, I see, and it's just like naming the top 10 fighters of all time. You can't just pick one, right? You can't, it's not possible. You have to mention more than one. Now, I'll say what I know. I would say Hagler Hearns,
I was just
Gatti
about to
Ward,
say,
Ali Frazier, the third fight, Ali Frazier, the first fight. Um, like I said, Alex Arguello and Aaron Pryor in 1982. Can't you can't go wrong with that. Same Leonard and Hearns, the first one, Pryor and Arguello, the first one. Both of those phenomenal, unbelievable fights. I would say a mixture, a fight that wasn't. It was as much skill as it was awesomeness, and a lot of people leave this one out. The first James Toney Mike McCallum fight, definitely
awesome
one of the
fight.
greatest of all time. Definitely, and I always tell fighters. And I told a fighter recently. He said, what fight do I need to watch to really see how to fight? Like, how do you box? How do you really fight and counter and use angles? I said, man, Leonard Hearn, I mean, Tony and McCallum won, 1991. I watched it in Stanley Levin's house at 222 Bayou Boulevard, Pensacola, Florida. I watched it in a room in the house with Roy Jones, Stacy McSwain, Reggie Johnson, Buster Drayton. There was like 10 of us fighters in there. The training team. We were in training camp for one of Roy's fights, and everybody was there watching that fight. And man, that was a blend of action, but also skill. Those guys, if you want to learn how to be a skillful fighter, you watch that fight.
For sure, for sure. So what are your thoughts on Dwight Muhammad versus George Foreman? Kawi.
Um,
I,
he was
like I feel like that was excellent. I mean, simply because Dwight Muhammad's one of my favorite because he's a shorter fighter now, and being 6'1" as a heavyweight, I'm probably the smallest every time.
Right,
So
right,
I love how he has a similar style to say like a Frazier. He slips under punches, counters
right.
real well.
Yeah,
But
he
George
was
Foreman just
small
over.
for George. Yeah, he was just too small for George. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. George was it's funny because he was fat at the time, and everybody made laugh, and he eats what he eat, the cheeseburgers or whatever it was,
yeah,
But George was good, man. George could fight. Like if you watch, I'll tell you what. When you say I pinpoint specific moments in fights, right? When skill is there, right? I'll give you an example. When Donald Curry knocked out Brett Lally, you can Google the fight. Donald Curry dropped him, and when the fight resumed, Donald rushes across the ring to Brett Lally, and right before he gets to him, he takes a quick step to the right, and he throws a left hook, and he knocks Lally out. Right? He didn't just blast away at him; he stepped over real fast. And I remember him saying, like, a fighter's instinct is to fire back, and I'm coming straight at him. Maybe he throws a big right hand and catches me. So at the last minute, he let Lally think he was coming in hot, straight in a straight line, and he stepped over and he threw the hook. And man, it was incredible, right? And then when Donald Curry knocked out McCrory, and it's funny because Milton's one of my best friends, but it is what it is. Like, it was a beautiful display, and Donald set up the counter left hook on the inside. He had been setting it up for a round and a half. You could see him moving his head, slipping jab, trying to get the timing down. And once he did, that was one of the all-time greatest moves, right? You watch Foreman when he fought Cooney, and you say, okay, he knocked him out in the second round. He caught him with a big shot. Go, no, man, no, no, no. Watch the fight. He caught Jerry with a big shot, and Jerry was dazed and kind of stuck in midair. And George stepped over. You never see a 280-pound guy step over. Like, George stepped over and he hit Jerry with the right hand from the side. People missed it. They think he just clubbed him to death. I go, nah, man, that
no,
was
yeah, boxing.
I mean, and he was doing stuff like that to Braxton, Dwight Kwawi. He was turning Kwawi into the punches and just running him into stuff. And yeah, I'm sure, and Kwawi actually was, doing all right. Like, he was letting his hands go,
Yeah,
but being on the inside there, and it's different being in the ring fighting someone than it is watching it, even just 20 feet away. You
yeah,
see that people in the audience don't see. And, the way George is pulling you into punches and stepping around and he's hitting you from the side, that's really good stuff. George Foreman was a seriously underrated technician, for sure.
And with the Mickey Ward run, May 18th, I'm actually going to try and interview Mickey Ward there.
Yeah, I'll say
oh,
I'll talk to him. You'll get that. Don't worry. He'll love that.
nice, nice.
He'll love that. Yeah, he'll love that. Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. You should come too. Are you coming?
I haven't even checked out what time it was. When is it?
Look,
It's May
The
18th.
Mickey Ward run, May 18th. If I don't have work, I think I could. I think I can make it. I don't see why not.
hey, it makes sense. 'Cause look, believe me, a lot of fighters are gonna come from there. I'm sure like Ray Oliveira will probably be there, and Louis Viter, and some of those guys. Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun for sure. Dickie Eklund will be
Yeah,
there. Yeah,
I'll make it happen.
yeah, cool.
All right, yeah, it was awesome doing this, guys. I actually got to run now. I'm working. I work in a high pressure steam plant, so I got to do
Okay,
rounds.
okay.
And
It's good talking
but
to you.
it was awesome talking to you guys.
All
And
All
right.
right.
thank you. All the stuff I got from you really insightful. Honestly,
Okay. No problem. No problem. Thank you.
thanks, guys.
See you.
All
Later.
right. Yeah.
And what did you think of the Devin Haney fight the other day?
You know what? I didn't see it. I was in Times Square, but a very minimal amount of people actually got to see the fight. So a bunch of us went to Dave and Buster's on 42nd Street, and when I got there, his fight was already over. So I didn't see. I had heard. You could tell me if this is true. I saw this meme that said it was the fight with the lowest amount of punches thrown ever. Is that true?
I think it is true because all he was doing was running away and just popping a jab, but it wasn't like. Yeah, I say probably it was true. The lowest amount of punches landed.
Right. Yeah.
I was
No,
surprised that he was running though. I thought his movement was looking fine. I thought he was gonna stop, throw five punches, and then knock the guy out, but he just kept moving.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's maybe something was wrong or whatever. But people,
Yeah,
people have to realize you have to you have to entertain at least to a degree. Like you want to win first and foremost, but you can fight pro, but you can't be on pay-per-view if you're not gonna have people want to see you again. Like it just makes no sense. You know what I mean? It's a bit. Excuse me. Boxing is a business, 100%. There's no one. We can't keep you from fighting. If you're a boring fighter, you can fight, right? But you can't be one of the main three fights. That's just not the way it works. So
yeah. The most entertaining fight on that card, of Ryan Garcia and Rollis was Teofimo Lopez when he fought. That was like one of the best fights on the card, in my opinion.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I said, I only saw basically the main event, so I wasn't able to catch any of them.
Did you see Canelo versus Skull?
No, I was on the road. We were coming home, and so yeah, I didn't see it. And I know he. I mean, I know he won. Did he win a decision?
Yeah, the scores, some of the scores were 115, 112, 115, 113, and there was another score. I forget what the third score was, but I'm sure it's on BoxRec.
So the guy gave him a decent fight.
Yeah, but he was just running away and stuff. But the
Yeah,
guy was the bigger guy, so I don't know why he just kept moving. He should have came forward and
yeah,
came
yeah.
after Canelo instead of just moving away, or
Right,
at least just jab if you're gonna,
right,
just
right,
keep
right.
jabbing.
Yeah. Well, that's it.
And what do you think of Jake Paul? What's your opinion on him?
Um, you know, I'm not really like I have no problem with anybody trying to be a fighter, right? He's trying to be a fighter, but you know, these these fights where it's obvious you're trying to get a serious advantage, right? You got Tyson is 60 years old. Come on, man. Like you're 60 years old. Like that's it. You're fighting guys who never fought before. You're fighting MMA guys. Now you're fighting a guy who was a champion but is famous for being lackadaisical and lazy. Like he's known for that, and smoking weed and he hasn't fought. I mean, I didn't even know Chavez was still fighting. I didn't even realize he was still a fighter. So there's always an angle, right? And that's where the boxing business irritates me, and I'm not a fan of it. Like when they make it where it's almost like a wrestling, where they make it like it's a circus and it's wrestling. I'm not into those type of fights at all. Like I'm really not. I don't, until Jake Paul fights fighters. Now he's fought guys that are so-called pro, right? But we know there's an angle, right? You want to fight a kid your age, right? And another up and comer, fight him, but he's got a situation where if he keeps winning, he can just make so much. He can milk the game, and a lot of people, like I'm a different type of person, right? Like people are saying, oh, you do the same thing. I said, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. Believe me, I wouldn't. like he's milking it because the bulk of his fans really don't know better. They really don't. And I'm not knocking them. I'm just saying you don't know better. You have no idea what you're looking at, what you're talking about. And but that's where we're at. People are making money and they're not, it's a way to get around coming up like a real pro fighter. Now for me, I'm the type where I would say no. I'd rather take the real route. Fight other fighters, and if I can't make it, then I can't make it. But you know, he's sitting on a lot of money, and he's found a way to make more. So I guess at the end of the day, when we're both when he's my age, he's gonna have a lot more money than I do. So it's hard in some people's eyes for me to criticize him. You know what I mean? Because he's found a way to make way more money than I have. So, but everybody has their own path.
And are you running the race May 18th? Or are you gonna be
Yeah,
running
yeah,
it?
I'll run. Yeah, yeah, I might as well. I haven't ran in a long time though, so we'll see. It's funny. Uh, and I have a picture of somebody at the finish line took a picture. So there's a picture of Mickey and I running. This was at the Hall of Fame in Canastota, and they do the 5K at the Canastota on I think it's Saturday morning or Sunday morning, and so there's people who really try to win. I remember one year Sean Porter won it, and you know. But I was running, and I'm jogging, and then Mickey was running. He waited up for me, so we started jogging together, and we're just talking, and I remember him saying, "Man," he goes, "I don't have to run anymore." He goes, "I'm not I'm not trying to win a race." We're just I said, "Look, I'm with you." So we came in like really low on the totem pole. We were low, but we ran it together. So I would assume he'll run again.
Oh, he's running it.
I would have to assume so. Yeah.
Oh yeah, cause that's cool. Cause yeah, I would like to run it, and he's running it too and stuff.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all I have to say today. Thank you for your time and coming on here. It was an awesome interviewing you.
Yes, sir. Always, always. Anytime you need me, I'm here. All right.
All right. See ya.
Yes, sir. Be good.